What's up, guys, and welcome back to the newbie channel. Today I wanted to go over, I gotta do some maintenance on my daily driver truck, and I kind of wanted to bring you guys along because I know there's a lot of people out there that are curious about this stuff. This channel isn't just for people that have been into cars and know everything, obviously, and I figure if anybody wants to get into this stuff or just needs a little bit of information on maintaining their stuff, this will be a good overview. Now, this isn't all the information everywhere. I mean, you're gonna have to Google a little bit, do your own research and learn from experience, but this will cover your bases so that you can get rocking and rolling with your own stuff. Okay, this is my daily driver. It is a 2015 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD. This has a 6-liter LQ4 with a 4L80 transmission. It's automatic. For those of you that don't know what a 4L80 is, this is actually the same engine that was in the Cutlass. It originated from a truck like this, a little older, but same deal. So today I'm going to be going through quite a few things, like how to check your oil, check washer fluid, check trans fluid, check air pressure in your tires. We need to rotate my tires. I did get an alignment done on this truck when I had new tires put on, but I don't think they actually did the alignment, or they kind of cruised through it because certain things just aren't what they're supposed to be. I'm getting a little bit of chopping on my tires here, and I'll explain what that is as I go over it, but I can tell that something wasn't done there. When I bought this truck, it had a heck of a forward rake to it from the factory. They just kind of do that so that when you're hauling stuff, truck sits level when it's underweight, but it drives me nuts. I can't look at it, so I went ahead and I cranked up the front end. I didn't spend any money. I can show you guys how I did that. I just cranked up torsion bars. So literally all you need is a couple tools and you can crank up the front end or crank it back down, whatever needs to be. But when you do that and you make that change, if you lift the truck up, the tires kind of poke out, or poke in rather. So one of them things, but I can walk you through that again. So first things first, we're just gonna get right down to the basics, right? We need to open the hood. It's pretty simple. On most vehicles, I got my little headlamp, don't mind me. I wanna make sure you guys can see everything. On most vehicles, if you come to the driver's side of the vehicle, there is a small lever. Mine's right here, it's clear as day. It's got my little icon on it. You just pull that guy and you can hear the hood pop open. It's not all vehicles. Not all vehicles are the same, but they're most of them are right down there, and that's gonna cover your basics. Then you'll have a small latch. If you just feel around, you'll find it. Some of them go sideways, some of them go up and down. But you push that, hold it, and lift the hood. This one has springs that holds it open. Some will have a hood prop down here that you lift up and hook into the hood, and usually the hood prop hole will be labeled for the prop, at least on newer vehicles. This one just has springs that hold it up. Some of them have shocks, so they're a little different as you go along, but this will cover, like I say, your basics to get you going. So as you look at this, you can't actually see the engine. Most newer vehicles do have covers on the engine, and so you're limited. You can't see a ton, but you can do basic maintenance. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check the oil. Now, I just changed the oil on this truck a couple weeks, maybe a week ago, week and a half, something like that. So it's gonna be good. But I do like to check it shortly after. This vehicle does burn a little bit of oil. I don't know why, it just always has since I got it from the dealership. So I'm gonna check it, and I might even put just a smidgen, and this is just a quick trick for anybody that doesn't know, a smidgen of ATF, automatic transmission fluid, into the oil. A lot of guys, when they change their oil, will throw, if you have a 4-quart system, they'll throw 1 quart of transmission fluid in and make it 5 quarts, right? If you have a 5-quart system, you put 4 quarts of oil, 1 quart of ATF. And the only reason guys do that is because ATF is a detergent, it's a cleaner, and it kind of helps clean off the inside of the engine for you if you're going long periods between oil changes. So I might throw some of that in because I don't go, you know, I don't change the oil as much as I should. So I might throw in some ATF. This vehicle in particular takes 5W30. I use Valvoline generally. It really doesn't matter what brand you use. What's important is the weight and whether or not it's synthetic or organic, conventional. I always call it organic. It's conventional, or half and half. My recommendation is to look at your owner's manual. Look at the owner's manual. They'll tell you exactly what to use. A lot of times it's posted underneath the hood. You know, they have all this information posted. You can find it up here sometimes, or right on the deck or on the air filter. I got some information there. I mean, they have little labels all through here, so just keep an eye. You can find it. A lot of like used cars, people will write it, or the dealership will write it right there on the cowl for you. It makes it very easy. But we're gonna do 5W30 Valvoline most likely, and it'll be, I use full synthetic on this. As to which one you use, older vehicles generally take conventional oil. If you have something, gosh, and this is kind of you know, everybody's gonna disagree and tell something different. I don't use full synthetic on anything under like 2008. You know, I just, full synthetic oil is, it has a cleaning agent in it, and older vehicles tend to have leaks, and those leaks get plugged by the leak themselves as dirt gets up there and plugs things up. And if you run a full synthetic through it, it tends to wash those plugs out of the leak, and it might leak. I've had that issue happen before many times, and I've heard it from many mechanics, many auto guys. So that's just kind of where I draw the line. It's just my opinion on what an older vehicle is starting to be now. So anything before that, I'll either use conventional or just partial synthetic. A blend of conventional and synthetic, and I'll ease it in there. This is newer. I'll use full synthetic on this. When do you change your oil? It used to be that every 3,000 miles you changed it, you know. That was the standard for everything back in the day, and the reason being is just oil technology wasn't what it is today. They've got so many, the science just keeps going with it. And they've got so many cleaners, so many detergents, so many minerals that they use. There's just a lot of stuff, a lot of science that goes into that stuff. And over the years, the mileage kind of goes up. So if you're using a full conventional oil, I would say 3,000 miles, change your oil. And it's not like, you gotta change it right at 3,000, otherwise your engine's gonna blow up. That doesn't happen, don't worry about that. What I would suggest for anybody is to check your oil periodically, for one. You know, when you stop at the gas station for gas, like once a week or something, just check your oil. Or just get in the habit of checking every time you stop for gas. That's even better. If you do that, you know what the oil level is, and I'll show you how to check that. You know what the oil's looking like, how nasty it is, how dark it is. Yeah, but it used to be every 3,000 miles, change your oil. Over the years, the oil technology's gotten better, and so if you're running a full synthetic oil or a synthetic blend, you can go anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000. Some full synthetic running newer vehicles, they recommend every 15,000 miles. Once again, look at your owner's manual and see if they have a preference. Every vehicle from every different make, you know, Nissan, Chevrolet, Toyota, just different manufacturers required or recommend different oils. General rule of thumb, you can pretty much throw any oil in any engine and it'll run. I said it. Everybody's gonna hate me. But look at the specs, because it is important. You could save yourself some issues in the future. So yeah, anywhere between 3,000 and 15,000 miles, really, depending on what you're running, what your vehicle is. Just look at that owner's manual. That'll tell you a ton. So first things first is we need to check the oil level. So you use a dipstick on internal combustion engines to figure out the oil level and what kind of shape the oil's in. Basically, it's just that. It's a dipstick. It's a long piece of metal that goes all the way down the side of the motor and into the oil pan, and it dips into the oil at the bottom of the pan. And when you pull it out, it has an indicator on it, little markings that'll tell you how high that oil is, if you're getting low, or the oil that's stuck on the dipstick, you can judge off of how bad it is or if it needs to be changed based on consistency, color, smell. A lot of the times, if the vehicle it's been starting real slow or something for a long time, it can have fuel in it, stuff like that. So on your average vehicle, on most vehicles, your dipstick's going to be yellow. Mine's right down here on the passenger side of the vehicle. It's just a cute little yellow loop, and I'm just going to pull that sucker out. I should have brought a rag with me, but I'm just going to use my fingers in this case for you guys to make it easy. We're going to wipe it off so that we get a solid reading. Go ahead and put it back in the tube. Make sure you're paying attention to where the tube's at, because sometimes they're tucked in and it's really hard to see them without the dipstick top. So let that dip in there, and then we'll pull it back out. And we're going to look at this. So on this vehicle, let me get up here for you guys. When you pull this out, you don't want to lift the dipstick up, like this, because the oil's going to run up the dipstick and it's going to lie to you. Now this one has little dots and some hashtags on it that kind of tell you what's what. And from the looks of this, I'm about 2 quarts low, actually. So it's hard to tell. I'm gonna make sure if there's anything that seems out of whack, dip it again and make sure that it's telling you what's really happening. General rule of thumb is just check it 3 times and you're probably in the clear if it tells you consistently the same thing. Yeah, same thing. See, I'm up to the 3rd dot. Okay. Each dot generally is a quart. In this case, it's a quart. So I'm about 2 quarts low. So I can add a quart of oil, and I'm going to add a quart of ATF to this thing just to clean her out. Oil's a little dark, okay, which means it's got some mileage on it. Basically what happens, and the reason we change our oil, is that the minerals and the detergents in the oil break down from all the beating, from the cam and the lifters and all that. So those minerals are what really keep things lubricated, and when they break down, for a lack of better vocabulary, it gets less slippery. The oil doesn't lubricate as well, it doesn't clean as well, and it just doesn't do its job in general as well. So it'll turn all that black color. That's just all those minerals that are broken down and burnt. That's what it is. So you want this to be like a golden brown. If you can see right through it, even better. So the darker it is, the longer it's been in here, the more miles it has on it, and you should probably change it if it's getting super dark, super black. This is me for like 2 weeks probably. It's already pretty dark. I put on a lot of miles, so there's that. And this engine does tend to burn a little bit, I've noticed that. So we'll just top it up and be happy. I will be doing another oil change here probably at the end of the month. So I'll give you a closer look. The tube is right there, plain as day. Now this here, it actually tells you 5W30, right? It's very clear. The vehicle's very clear and tells you exactly what it wants. This is where you fill the oil at. The dipstick's to check it, that's to fill it, okay? So I'll go ahead and I'll top that off, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So I figured I better show you guys this, being as we're on the topic of changing oil. We're not changing the oil on this, we're just adding a little bit because I just changed it not that long ago and it's upcoming anyway. But if you do need to change your oil, you're gonna need to drain it first, right? So if you go underneath the vehicle, you'll find a drain plug on the oil pan of the engine, and I'll show you what this looks like. I'm gonna jump underneath here. I'm just gonna show you where it is on this vehicle. This is gonna vary for every single vehicle. Engines are different, they're shaped different, everything's different. But this will give you an idea of what you're looking for and what it looks like, because it looks basically the same on every engine. So I'm gonna turn on my little lamp or two here, bring a second lamp, make sure you guys can see great. We're gonna get down and dirty with it. Okay, so right there is an oil filter. Okay, it's kind of a long round deal. I mean, you can see what it looks like. And on this one right here is my oil plug. This is the oil pan. This is where all the oil for the motor is held. Okay, so those are the two you need to take out. You need to take that plug out, let all the oil drain into a can or something, put it back in, make sure it's tight, then move over to this guy, pull him off. You just twist him off by hand or use an oil filter wrench. They make a special wrench for it. And when you put the new one in, on top of this, way up here on that seal, on top of it there's a rubber O-ring that runs across there kind of, and you want to make sure there's oil on that ring. Okay, generally I put a little oil in the filter and I put oil on that ring to lubricate it. If you don't, it won't seal. All right, so there's that. Once your oil's drained and your filter's changed, then you can come up here and you can fill your oil. I do it with the dipstick out and the engine off. Best to have the engine warm when you do it also. Makes the oil a little thinner and it'll flow out. You'll get more oil out in general. Just a good rule of thumb. So that is how you do an oil change. Now moving on to item number 2 is our washer fluid. Okay. On this vehicle, it's right here on the driver's side. It's got this little marker on it. Almost every vehicle will have that marker. It looks just like that. And there's a few different types of washer fluid you can use. I live in Minnesota. It gets freaking 50 below. And so I use something that is a super low temperature. If you go to a parts store or whatever, you tell them, hey, I'm just looking for something to wash my windows. I live in Texas, who cares? It doesn't matter. The windshield washer fluid is what you're looking for. If you're living in one of the northern states or somewhere that it gets really cold in the winter, I put like a 30 below or whatever rating fluid in here, a de-icer, and I just run that all year. I don't switch it out for something different in the summer. It's like $2 a bottle for a gallon of this stuff. So I just run the same stuff. I run de-icer, works really good. You can just pour it right in here. And there is, some of them will have little fill level marks. I don't think this one does. I just fill it up until it reaches this thing and I'm a happy camper. You can literally see it in the tube, in the bottle. So moving on to item number 3 is transmission fluid. Now right here is your transmission dipstick tube. This is going to be different in a different location on a lot of vehicles, but it always comes from the back of the engine or the side of the engine if it's a front wheel drive. Now, if you have a manual transmission in your car, if you have a 5-speed or something, you can't check this fluid level from the outside of the car. You just gotta drop the pan on the oil on the transmission and drain it out and replace it. That's all there is to it. On these, they have a dipstick, just like the oil did, and this is where you fill it up, everything. So when you check this, the engine has to be running. Okay, so if you change your oil, you fill it up with oil. Once again, check your manual. It'll tell you how much oil you need for your engine. I'm not even going to get into what they are. Check your manual. That'll tell you what it is. Once you do that, start up the vehicle and pay attention to your oil pressure gauge and make sure you have oil pressure. As long as you have oil pressure, you can move on to checking the transmission. My oil pressure gauge is right there. It's got a little oil can thing on it, okay? And on most GM V8s, you want right around 40 PSI oil pressure. Sometimes some of the stuff is like 20 or 30 upon idle, but right around 40. So to check transmission fluid, you're gonna do the same exact thing as you did with the oil. You're gonna start the engine up on this one, and then you're gonna pull that dipstick, wipe it off, stick it back in, pull it again while it's running, and check it from there. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're going to pull our dipstick out just like this, keeping our dipstick handle up in the air so that it doesn't run down our stick and lie to us. And then right here, we have the same exact thing as we did for the oil dipstick. Now everything looks perfect on this. This one will tell you hot and cold. So if the engine transmission is cold, it should be down near that line. And if it's hot, it should be up towards these two dots. And it tells you exactly what's right. So we're perfect. It looks light in color. It's not black. That's what we're looking for. So transmission fluid, when you're looking at it, like I said, it's generally red. Different manufacturers sometimes change that, but most vehicles it's red. What you're looking for on the stick is for it to be at the right spot, the right indicator, and it tells you exactly what it's looking for. Hot, cold, here, right? Each one of those dots, generally a quart. Same as the dipstick. As far as the fluid goes, you want it to be light in color. Light dark red is happy. If it starts looking brown or black, then it's wore out. It's been in there, it's got a lot of miles on it. That transmission's probably burning clutch packs over the years. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your transmission necessarily, but it needs to be changed. Now, how do you change transmission fluid? Well, there's only one way on most vehicles. Some have a plug on the transmission pan, but that's very few. And you'd be very lucky to run into that. A lot of performance parts will put plugs on them for you to make life easier, but most OEM transmissions do not have drain plugs. It's just the sad fact of life. What you have to do to drain the fluid out is to drop the pan, okay? There's one other option. That is that you have to bring it to an auto shop and have them flush the system. They'll hook up a machine and it'll suck the bad fluid out and put good fluid in at the same time. It'll flush everything, all the contaminants, it'll flush out of there. I don't recommend doing this to just any vehicle. If that vehicle has over, gosh, I'd say 50,000 miles, I wouldn't do it. Then that's up for debate. There's plenty of people that would argue with me, but the same type of thing as putting synthetic oil in, that flush will blow away. You know, if it's an older vehicle or it's got a ton of miles on it, there's a chance that it leaked at one point, and that the crud and the dirt that just either in the oil or on the ground that flies up plugs that leak. And when you flush it, it washes all that stuff away, and all of a sudden your vehicle starts leaking. I don't recommend it. Like I say, there's a ton of guys out there, a ton of people out there that will argue with me on that. It's up for interpretation. If you want to do it, go for it at your own risk. I wouldn't. I don't. And as a matter of fact, I've never flushed a single transmission on my personal vehicles, ever. Not ever. And most of my personal vehicles have run up to 300,000 miles. Just saying, I don't swap engines or transmissions. If it needs an engine and transmission, that thing's gone. I get a new vehicle. So make your own decisions. I guess another thing that we need to do is check air pressure in the tires. Now this vehicle is new enough to where it has an indicator inside of the truck that tells me the air pressure and warns me if one's out of whack or too low or whatever. That being said, I'm not gonna add any air to my tires today, but I'm gonna show you how to do it, because that's what we're here for. So there's my tires, right? Most vehicles that have tire sensors for air pressure, these things will be green. The valve stems will be green. It's usually how you can tell. But there is a sensor inside the tire. It's mounted to this valve stem. This valve stem and the sensor are all one unit, and they're mounted inside the rim, okay? If one of those goes out and your car's freaking out at you and it's telling you, hey, this is wrong, the air pressure's jacked up, the worst it can be is annoying. You don't necessarily have to change it, but you probably should. As far as pressure goes, tires always have it on the rubber. They'll tell you, if you look at all these little letters, they tell you your max load, they tell you your tire size, they tell you everything, what ply it is, all that stuff. And if you look around, it's usually in smaller letters. You'll see this one says a max of 80 psi cold. So that doesn't mean jump off the highway after going 75 miles an hour for a 6-hour drive and air it up to 80 psi, because the hotter something gets, it'll inflate. So 80 psi on these particular tires. All my sensors say they're good. They don't have any issues. I'm not going to add air. But all you would have to do is get yourself to an air compressor. You can go to a gas station. A lot of gas stations will have it. You'll take that little air chuck that they have, take your cap off, and you'll put that air chuck right in there. There's a little bitty valve in there, that little needle. When you put an air chuck to it, it pushes that needle in and it opens the valve. And I can show you what I mean. I happen to have one right here. If I come over here, I keep one of these buggers right here. Now this is a little longer, you know, whatever, but they look like that, okay? Or like this. This is just longer, it's easier to get into places. And you would hook your air compressor hose right up to here, and you'd bring it over, and you would mate this side to that, and you just shove it in there, okay? You could hear a little air seep out when I did that. That's how you air up the tires. How do you know how much air you have in there? How do you know how much pressure it is? Well, you got to use a pressure gauge. It's basically the same thing. Operates the same way, except you don't have an air hose on it, right? Here's an air pressure gauge. See if I can get that on my magnet. This is what an air pressure gauge looks like. All it is a tube that fills up with air. And let me see here, I'll set my camera down, but it's a tube that fills up with air, and it slides a little gauge out and tells you how much air you got. Watch, I'll show you. So we're just gonna put it on there just like we would do with our air chuck, and you're gonna see at the back end that little gauge will pop out. Ready? Bam. So we do that on all 4 of our tires, make sure they're all the same and at to the pressure that they want. Now, that pretty much sums up air pressure in your tires. Moving us to the next option, which is rotating the tires. You're gonna need a socket and a breaker bar or a ratchet. If you have an impact, that's even better. I'm gonna use an impact. They're great. They make things fast and easy. You're gonna need to jack up the vehicle. You're gonna need a jack, okay? You're gonna need jack stands to be safe. And depending on how long that wheel has been on that car, it may not want to come off. You could take off all the lug nuts and you might have to beat the crap out of it to get it off. It's been known. I use a sledgehammer. It works. Don't hit the rim, hit the tire. We got to take off all these lug nuts, and I do, you know, every single one. And in order to rotate my tires, there's different ways you can do this, and you can Google it. There's like a bunch of different sequences you can use. I only do it one way generally because I don't rotate my tires like ever. If there is a certain mileage that you can rotate tires after they're new, I don't go by it. I just do it when I feel like it. Look it up. On this one, basically what I'll be doing is I'll be taking that back tire and putting it on the front driver's side, and this front tire and putting it on the back driver's side, crisscross. Okay, the reason I'm going to rotate my tires, and I wouldn't do this honestly if I didn't see this, but the reason I'm going to rotate my tires is because this is that chop I was talking about earlier. If you look down here, let's see if I can show you guys, if it's hard to see. You can see how that tread, every other tread is wore down a little more than the last. This one's high, this one's low, high, low, and they're worn kind of at an angle, some of them. Which means, and it's only the edge, it's only this edge, which means these wheels and tires are sitting like this. The top is pointing out and it's not laying perfectly flat. Which means when I had my alignment done, they didn't actually do it. Or they didn't adjust that, one of the two. So being as I have that kind of wear on my tires, this is going to wear out before the rest of it does. And it's going to wear out faster because most of the weight is there. It's going to wear out my tires faster. And being as I have $1,000 worth of tires on this truck, I don't feel like paying $1,000 for a new set just because this one spot's worn down. So we're going to take these and rotate them so that the backs are in the fronts and they're crisscrossed, and everything will be happy. So I just went ahead and I rotated all the tires. It takes a minute, so I didn't think you guys would want to watch me go back and forth. I told you how to do it. You just take the lug nuts off, pull the tire off, swap them. One thing to note that I forgot to tell you guys is that if you're doing this to a newer vehicle that does have sensors in the tires, they're going to need to be recalibrated, okay? Because each sensor tells you which tire it's at, right? So this sensor is for the right front tire. That one's for the left front tire, so on and so forth. So if I take the right front tire and I put it to the left rear, your gauge is going to be lying to you. One day you'll be running down the road and it'll be, hey, your right front tire is low, and you'll go put air in that tire and that one will be overfilled and that one will still be low. So in order to recalibrate them, you just got to bring it into the dealership and have them reset them. Yep. Oh, we were going to grease the suspension. Okay. This is something. This is a big one. Now, in order to do this, you're going to need a grease gun. You know, they're pretty cheap for just a handheld pumper, and you're going to need a tube of grease. You just get red or greens, you know, like ball joint grease. That'll work fine. Basically, we're going to get under the truck and I'm going to show you where to look or what to find. Anything that moves, anything that has those little rubber boots on them, look for them. They'll have little bitty, what they call grease zerks on them. And you put your gun on that and you fill it up with grease. Now, you don't want to fill it up too much. You don't want it pouring out the edge. You just fill up that boot, call it a day. You'll watch it. I mean, you'll see that little rubber boot will expand. And once it gets a little plump, you just pull off. You stop pumping. So yeah, I'll try to get underneath there with my little light and show you guys where they are now. On a lot of newer vehicles, on a lot of smaller vehicles, they're non-serviceable. You can't grease them. They won't have a grease zerk on them. Just is what it is. They run for as long as they can, and then you got to swap them out, which is fine. On heavier duty trucks like this and, you know, stuff like that, they'll have grease zerks. They need to be maintained. Driver's side, we're gonna roll up underneath here, and I'm probably gonna have to adjust my thing because I don't have a whole lot of room to work here. It's nice to have it jacked up for this. This truck is pretty high, so it makes it nice. So right there, the lower ball joint, okay? I can see the grease zerk. Let's see if I can get light on there correctly for you. Okay, you see it? Now, this right here, this right here is our lower ball joint, and that little nub right there is your grease zerk. I'll try to wipe it off quick, but I'm really stuck here. This guy, I wiped it off a little bit. That little guy right there is your grease zerk. He has a little pin in the middle of him, and when you put up a grease gun to it, that'll push in just like your air valve on your tire, and it'll work out. Now, things to look at. This ball joint looks fine, looks perfect. There's no grease pouring out the edges. The boot isn't torn. Life is good. We might just add a little grease to him and be happy. Now, directly above from that, there's an upper ball joint. And that one looks like the boot's a little jacked up. That might have something to do with me torching up the keys, and it is what it is. So that guy honestly looks like he could be replaced. I'm not going to replace him, but he should probably be replaced. He'll probably be worn out soon. I'm going to run him for a bit, and he'll be fine, but he's going to need a replacement in the future because, as you can see, boot's a little torn up, grease is pouring out. It's holding. As long as that boot doesn't get too torn up, it'll hold grease and it'll keep grease in the joint for you, which is nice. So that's something good. And this is something you run into if you start jacking up trucks or whatever, is that angle of that control arm really changes and puts stress on those joints. So you see a lot of guys complaining that all their joints are junk after they jack up a truck. this is why. This isn't even jacked up. This is stock. I just cranked the keys up a little bit and made it a little smidgen higher. Other than that, we have the upper and lower ball joints. Some vehicles will have drive shaft zerks. They're really kind of hard to get to, but they would be down there in the middle of the drive shafts. I don't think this one has it. Just look at all your moving parts and you'll see if there's, you know, a lot of your steering components, stuff like that will have zerks on them. And if they have zerks, add a little bit of grease. It's nothing crazy. I'm not going to go through it all because it's really hard to get to when I'm laying like this, but you're just looking for stuff like that. That's what you're looking for, your joints. On that note, guys, that pretty much covers everything, okay? You've got your oil, basically all your fluids, all your greasing, all that stuff, your tires. These are the main things you need to know to service your vehicle yourself and just keep it on the road and keep it happy for a long period of time. There's other things obviously that you can look at. There's so many moving parts to these things, it's crazy, but that's the main stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna keep coming out with more, and you know us, we're generally into race car things and cool stuff, but every once in a while I have to do maintenance like this anyway, and I think it'd be nice for the people that just don't know or are looking to get in the sport or are interested in cars and trucks and things of that nature to see this stuff, because this is the very fundamentals, this is the very basics of what you need to know. Just as a driver on the road, you should know a good portion of this stuff. If you get stuck on the highway, you figure out how to take off your tires, all that stuff. There's so much to know, and you can start from the very basics and get all the way to the, you know, extravagant stuff. But at the end of the day, the best teacher is experience. The more time you spend on this stuff, the better off you're gonna be. The more you're gonna know. Those guys that just know stuff off the top of their head that can tell you, it's because they've dealt with it personally, probably many times. And, you know, experience is the best teacher in most cases. So thanks again for watching, guys. We're going to keep pumping out videos as often as we can, and